ball, but what we do have today is the next best thing, which is Dr. Joe May. No pressure there, Dr. May, but Chancellor of Dallas College, to offer some insight into how our region is rebuilding our economy through workforce development. Now, following Dr. May, we will have our Board of Directors induction ceremony conducted by none other than our very own past chairwoman, Texas State Representative Angie Chen Button. We're so honored. Our event will conclude with a panel discussion on education and how our schools are preparing students for future workforce. Before we begin the program, however, I would like to take a minute to introduce to you our chairwoman for 2021, Miss Amy Hofflin. Now, Amy has been a long-standing active member of our chamber for the past decade, and she's been a valuable and vital contributor to programs such as Asian festivals and several other things. Amy currently serves as the Senior Director of the Crow Museum of Asian Art of the University of Texas at Dallas. She leads the preeminent museum dedicated to the works of China, Japan, Korea, India, and Southeast Asia in the Southern United States. She is responsible for overseeing the artistic and administrative operations of the Crow Museum of Asian Art. As the longest tenured executive director in the Dallas Arts District, Amy has formed deep ties with cultural, business, and city leaders. A visionary and passionate arts advocate, she was a driving force in support of the formation of the Dallas Arts District organization and is a founding board member for the group that serves as an advocate for the venues and organizations in the Dallas Arts District. Amy, I speak for the entire chamber when I say we are so lucky to have you. And so without further delay, I present to you Miss Amy Hofflin. Amy?
Thank you so much, Susan, and to Divya, who is in our production booth today, just doing amazing work. I'm very honored to be with each of you, and especially with Chancellor May and our esteemed panelists. So I am so grateful that we've come to this moment, and want to thank again Susan and Divya for creating this wonderful event. I can't think of any place I would rather be today. And before I introduce our esteemed keynote speaker, Dallas College Chancellor Joe May, I'd like to make a few comments. Today's program launches the Asian Chamber of Texas's work in this new year, 2021. In fact, just a few hours ago, families from across Asia, from Harbin to Ho Chi Minh City, launched this year's celebration of the Lunar New Year, the Year of the Ox, with fireworks and festivities. Just as life looks different now, Lunar New Year is looking different across the globe as we virtually celebrate in our homes. What can we learn from the beloved zodiac animal, the ox? And I sourced some of this information from an article in Pure Wow by Jamie Wright. People born in the year of the ox, and if you are a year of the ox, we'd love to know it in the comments. People born in year of the ox are strong, reliable, fair, conscientious, and they inspire confidence in others. They are also calm, patient, methodical. That's a word we're gonna hear about here in a moment. And they can be trusted. They might say very little, but they do have opinions, and they also believe strongly in themselves. They can be stubborn, they hate to fail. We're gonna need that this year. And they do not lose their temper easily, or they do not lose their temper easily. They stay kind of steady. They're serious and quiet, not very sociable, but they do have an immense amount of common sense. You can tell that I'm not an ox as I'm using the word they. I'm actually a rat. So we're ending my year of the rat, and I just have a shout out to all of the rats out there. The year of the ox will be a year of endurance. It's no longer just about survival, but about anchoring ourselves and making our dreams real. The ox is associated with yin, which is feminine, receptive energy. We've got great leaders who are women in our chamber and in our staff today. And our responsibilities will feel especially heavy this year. Things that were once easy may feel a little bit stacked and require more effort and strength in this year of the ox. Sorry about that. Nothing like live television. So it's not only the year of the ox, it's also the year of the metal ox. Metal year brings out the most dedicated and persistent qualities in our second metal year, and we'll see a lot of grittiness, and we'll have to make grittiness a priority. Is any of this sounding familiar? We're going to need all of these skills. And overall, it's a year for recovery. It's a year for making long-term investments in the future and building a family. I feel like we're doing that today with the Asian Chamber, continuing to build a family. Whatever we're pursuing, what we need most in this year of the ox is discipline. And while there is some levity in thinking about the traditional attributes of a cultural festival and celebration, these qualities of grit, resilience, fortitude, patience, and tenacity are real needs in 2021. The Asian and Asian American communities have been deeply impacted by the events surrounding COVID-19 in health and well-being, business, and especially small businesses owned by Asian Americans from the hotel industry to restaurant. Our beloved Asian American communities have been deeply impacted from incidents of hatred and xenophobia. As we launch this year, I would like to offer a moment of silence to honor all beings who have experienced loss, struggle, and suffering from this global pandemic. Thank you. The Asian Chamber of Texas represents over 40 years of leadership by Asian Americans in our North Texas communities. That leadership, launched by the late Robert Shue, who was a friend of mine, and carried forward by so many, represents the best minds in business, the best hearts in compassion, and the best vision in seeing the future. The leaders, both past and present, of the Asian Chamber understand that a collective voice for Asia makes us stronger. As one human being, I can create small acts of change. And as the Asian Chamber of Texas, we represent the voices of over 637,177 people. And these are 2010 numbers. There is a power in number, in heart, and in spirit. The 20 leaders on this board, and I'll read their names proudly and loudly, are Gloria Matur, Mohammed Fashori, Crystal Rocco, Dennis Kustu, Anne Badmus, Faiz Hussein, Shelley Merritt, Shagorika Ghosh, Naeem Ahmad, my mentor, May Mao, Macy Hyken, Sarah Hoos, Caroline Kim, Paul Tai, Amy Jackson, Neha Kunte, Sean Hu, Lisa Mark, Susan Phillips, and Sushma Malhotra. These 20 leaders care deeply about how we create impact as the first and the most important umbrella organization representing all Asian communities in our region, in business, in compassion, and for the future. I am an ally of the Asian American community. As a leader of the Crow Museum of the Asian Art for more than 20 years, I believe and I know of the vibrant contributions Asian Americans make in our city each day. And I want to create action to make the Asian American voice known, highly valued, and celebrated. An ally is a person that actively promotes and aspires to advance the culture of inclusion through intentional, positive, and conscious efforts that benefit people as a whole. We can all be allies of each other. An allyship is called for more than ever. I am deeply honored to have been asked, and I'm proud to represent an organization I've worked closely with since the year 2000. There is no question there is much work to do. So like the ox, we must humbly get to work with endurance to continue growing the chamber, to anchor this organization with sustainability and work toward our dreams. It will take something: leadership, commitment from the communities at large, and the major corporations in our cities to lead the way on behalf of all Asian Americans. With a commitment to have access to resources in health, small business, and big business. To create and promote relevant strategies for cultural competencies for leaders in the areas of diversity, inclusion, and equity. Let no one be left without the resources to lead, learn, and thrive as a member of the communities, as an ally, and as a friend. Today's keynote, Chancellor Mwbe, is a perfect example of a leader ally. Working to ready our next leaders in work and in compassion, Dr. Mwbe serves as the 7th Chancellor of Dallas College, formerly known as the Dallas County Community College District. Dr. Mwbe assumed his duties leading the 7 college 165,000 student system in late February of 2014. So we're just on his 7th anniversary. Throughout his career, Mwbe has expanded opportunities for students who want to pursue a bachelor's degree by starting at a community college. Just like I did, actually. I took summer classes at Collin College. At the same time, he brings a strong commitment to improve the Dallas economy by helping to grow middle-class jobs. In higher education since 1978, he is known both nationally and internationally as a result of his relentless, think about that, methodical and tenacious advocacy of the role of community colleges in solving today's most challenging social issues. And I know that this moment represents years of a strong relationship and friendship between the Chamber and DCCD. And on behalf of our board members and our organization, please help me welcome the Honorable Chancellor, Dr. Mwbe. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And Amy, thank you. Thank Susan Phillips, all the guests that are here today. It really is great to be here. And they have the opportunity to just to share a little time with you and to share some thoughts. And boy, there's so much to talk about, and as has been unusual, but occasionally happens. Just as we were getting started, some technical issues on my end, but hopefully you can hear me, see me, and all is good. So I really do appreciate the opportunity to share with you today. And there's been so much going on. The fact that we've been in a pandemic certainly has changed and had a dramatic impact on us. But quite honestly, it really hasn't slowed us down. And in fact, I think it's really accelerated some of the work that we've been doing. And yeah, as you mentioned, I am just kind of wrapping up my 7 years in the district, about to start my 8th, and that's certainly a milestone, but also 1 year coming up of being in a COVID-19 world, a milestone that is memorable only from the point of view that we continue to endure, to adjust, to accommodate. And I think all of us wake up every day looking to the future, and we know it's going to be a different future, but one nonetheless. I think we're all ready to get started on and to engage with as we look to the future. I had the opportunity this morning for my weekly briefing on the virus, on the vaccine, what's happening, hearing from health officials, county leaders, others, as we do every Thursday morning. A small group of us, including superintendent of schools, head of transportation, hospitals, and others, have a conversation about our community and what's going on. And I certainly sense folks are tired, but also a real sense of optimism as we look to the future. And so as we got into this, and I want to talk about the economy and the impact and kind of what we see. And certainly from Dallas College, it was a major transition as we shifted 99% of our courses in about 4 days from face-to-face to online. That's 15,000 courses, 82,000 students. Not counting so many of the other industry certification programs and others that we did. And we worked with our students, initially providing them hotspots at no cost, then tablets, and then laptops, all designed to really help meet their needs and ensure that our students could be successful. And for many, this was an incredible strain on them, on their families, as we saw tens of thousands of our students immediately lose their jobs. I want to talk about that here in a few minutes, and then how we were responding to meet those needs. And like all of you, what we had hoped would be a short-term situation certainly turned into a much longer situation. But we realized that as a community college, we're really uniquely positioned to be a resource to our community, and that's how we saw ourselves, both as looking at how we can meet the needs of students, how we can support our employers, and how we can help our overall community not only recover but excel. And we really focused on several things, taking care of the immediate needs of our students that were struggling in many cases, and struggling because of a lack of technology in many cases, struggling because the going online was not their primary way in which they would have preferred to learn, but also the impact on them and their families. As our students lost jobs, so did their parents and others in the process. So I want to just talk about that, and if I could get just kind of the slides, if I could have those shown, and let's just jump right to slide number 2. If we could, and hopefully everyone can see this as I share just a few slides with you here in terms of what happened with unemployment, and pay particular attention to March and April of 2020. You can see the direct impact that the pandemic immediately had on unemployment across the state of Texas. We had seen a pretty steady 3.5%, as you can see, in January and February unemployment rate. Then we started to see a little bit of an uptick as we got into the early phases of the pandemic, and then you see the dramatic acceleration of that just skyrocketed. Initially rising to from 3.7 to 5.1, and then to 13.5% in April. And I want to get into some additional details of this. This meant that at its peak, that roughly 1.3 million jobs were lost in the month of April alone across the entire state of Texas. And of course, this affected almost everyone as we were dealing with it. And it had a unique impact, if we could go to the next slide, on the DFW area. And just to share this information, if we were to go back and forth, and we're not, but you'll see that we were a little slightly ahead, better off all the way through. We were at 3.2% in January, February, and then jumped to 13.2%, slightly better than the rest of Texas. So this obviously creates is where we talk about the economic impact. And I want to make a comment on this, because a lot of times I hear a lot of references and comparisons to the 08-09 recession. And from our perspective, these were very, very different events. And we can get into, for one thing, if you look at the right, in many ways, some of the recovery, how quickly that occurred. It took years in 08-09. To see some of that recovery. This is really much, much more akin to the aftermath of a hurricane or another natural disaster, except at a massive scale, and really limiting the ability for people to help each other out in the process. Let's go to the next slide, which number 4 and I want to put this one up because this is a little bit getting at the heart of why I think our conversations matter, and certainly I think one that we need to be paying a lot of attention to, because it turns out that the unemployment was dramatically different depending upon your educational attainment. I believe last year, Susan, at this event, you had Rob Kaplan as your speaker. Rob regularly highlights the fact that if you had a bachelor's degree or a post-secondary credential, today, the impact of COVID-19 is still has some impact on you, as you can see, going from a 2% unemployment if you had a bachelor's degree back in January and February, compared to 3.5 overall, to now a 3.8. But look at what's happened when you compare this to those with less than a high school diploma, particularly or a high school diploma. And not only were they initially disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, they are still disproportionately impacted. Where today the unemployment rate, as we see for those with when we were in April, about roughly a little less than 10% or so for it's actually, if you were at 8.4% at the peak, if you had a bachelor's degree, compared to 21% with less than a high school diploma. And then even as we look at getting into December of this year, we see that they're actually at about 9.8% if you have less than a high school diploma, compared to 3.8% for individuals with a bachelor's degree. So, and that differentiates whether you have an industry-based certification or an associate's degree as well. And if everyone is always saying everyone needs some type of post-secondary education, folks, that's what this is all about. And They need it as individuals. We need it as a society, and certainly our employers need it for the workforce. Let's go to the next slide, because I just want to get kind of a nuance of this too. There's been a lot made in the media about the disproportionate impact based on gender, and particularly what's happened to women, which again, I point out, this is different than your typical recession. If you look at back in 2008, you actually see that women fared better than men in terms of job loss. They simply weren't impacting, where we're seeing exactly the opposite with COVID, where women are more impacted than has occurred in other recessions in this area. And particularly women of color have been disproportionately harmed during the pandemic. They have been slower to recover. And part of that is that they were overrepresented in essential jobs. You combine that with the direct effects of having childcare centers shut down, that education went virtual. All of this came together to create a disproportionate impact on this important part of our workforce and of our population. So as we look coming out of this, I think that what we're seeing right now is still slower job recovery for women compared to men in terms of the overall impact of the pandemic and what's happening at this point. If I could get to the next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about Dallas College. And what we've tried to do, and I think this is reflective of other community colleges. The programs may vary somewhat in terms of exactly how we responded. You know, part of the genius of community colleges is that we do focus on our local communities, and so as the really having focused on the economy, particularly in Dallas County, and you're going to hear from Collin College, and others here lately. We really went to work to understand and to make sure that we were able to provide a breadth of programs and services to support the need. Now, honestly, I could talk a lot more than you would ever want to hear as it relates to helping our students get jobs, helping others. But I just want to really mention four specific resources that we either opened up or amplified as we got into the pandemic, and really looking at how we can best meet those needs. We put in place very specific programs. One, our ASCM, as we call it, the Association of Supply Chain Management, and Dallas College have teamed together to really offer training, help with entry-level employment, as really looking at supporting supply chain management. Now, think about it, what's happened with the economy, how people are shopping today, the needs to get items shipped and on time. Supply chain management is more important than ever for companies, for organizations, for others, and we'll get into that. The other area in which we've had this in place, our Work Ready U program, which is really focused on individuals without a high school diploma, not just getting them what we normally think of as the GED, but getting them the skills and that they need in order to get a job. Individuals don't just want a GED, they really want to be able to go to work. So we combine ESL, GED with job training, all at no cost for individuals. And we as a result of the pandemic, we really expanded our online offerings to meet this need. We also brought together a partnership with the U.S. Department of the Army and the Department of Defense to put together a program for servicemen transitioning out of the military, as men and women. The courses, actually, this is kicking off September 1. It took us a little while to pull this together. But if you think about it, at this time, as these individuals are transitioning out into an economy that is very different for what they were expecting to see and experience. So we're bringing those individuals in and frankly working with folks not just from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but from elsewhere. To help them transition. We hope they'll stay in the area and be employed here. This is a part of a strategy that we have in place. And I want to mention UpLearn as also a new effort on our part that is really focused on understanding what's happening with machine learning, artificial intelligence, and this space where we can provide training for individuals in these fields, and we're making these available to furloughed workers specifically. These are virtual sessions, fast track to allow workers the chance to train, re-enter the workforce, and these in-demand skills, jobs that are there, meeting those needs. And so, much like everything else we're doing, it is online. And it is being done in remote ways. We've expanded our apps so that it makes it easier for learning to occur on the go. For example, with our Work Ready U, we rolled out a new mobile app in conjunction with the pandemic that also not just helps individuals connect to the training, but it gives them a opportunity to connect to the latest job openings in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we've worked both with Apple, with Android, to make sure that regardless of the platform, that individuals can access these programs and services to meet their needs. And I want to mention one other that doesn't fit as neatly into the program areas but it does affect perhaps even some of you that are here today. We know the pandemic has done more than just impact individuals, and it has had a disproportionate impact on small businesses. These small businesses throughout the area were just hit with a powerful blow that was quick, instant, and many of them weren't able to recover. So we partnered with the City of Dallas, local chambers of commerce, and there were many, and to create and support a Dallas Forward. This is an initiative comprised of private and public partners dedicated specifically to supporting small businesses during the pandemic. And so far, we've been able to help over 200 businesses. Some of this was to apply for the financial support that was through PPP, through other means that were there. Some of it was helping and restructuring their finances. Others were simply helping them out where they were just bombarded with the impact of the transition to get access to protective equipment, other things that they needed in order to continue in operation. And of those 200 businesses, 58% were, or a big percent of those were minority-owned businesses. Now, we don't draw the line with Dallas County. We actually support businesses throughout the region, but all of these were really about how we could help and support economic recovery, whether it was an industry partner, whether it was a small business partner, or what the needs are. And if I could have the next slide, please, if we could see that, please, that would be great. I want to mention as we get into the area, and certainly virtually every sector of the industry and the economy were impacted. But if you look at the items circled, if you can see that here, none more than the leisure and hospitality industry. It just stands out with the most dramatic year-to-year negative impact of all sectors. And of course, it's easy to understand why. With social distancing, with many of the restrictions directly impacting restaurants, bars, other hospitalities in the that we saw overnight, literally thousands of individuals out of work, and restaurants cut way back. So during this time, the Texas Restaurant Association estimated that about 700,000 restaurant employees were furloughed. That was about 61% of those working in the state of Texas. And we immediately began meeting with them to talk about how we could help them restore confidence in restaurants, how we could really help their staff in working with people that were coming back but didn't feel comfortable either dining inside or outside. And of course, many remain skeptical today as we look at it. And if we could go to the next slide, that would be great. I want to kind of get here. I probably need to wrap it up, but what we did with them was we received a joint grant with the Texas Workforce Commission. We developed the Texas Restaurant Promise program, and this was really about providing restaurants training opportunities for their staff, others to get a certification that would allow them to reopen. They actually get a decal that they can put outside their restaurants. We've now worked with the National Restaurant Association and others to skill this up and to develop a means of meeting this need. And as I want to go ahead and maybe just kind of wrap this up if I could, and open it up if we have time for a few questions to get at it. One of the most often questions that I'm asked during this time is where do I need to be looking for a job if I want training? And there are a couple of things that we're seeing on the horizon. We are seeing a bounce back in hospitality. We are seeing some bounce in retail, but big areas of growth in information technology, manufacturing here in the North Texas area, real estate, rental leasing. There was some restrictions in educational services early on that are now rebounding. Construction is the same, as well as, interestingly enough, everyone thought healthcare was growing during this. It didn't, but now we're starting to see a real rebound with that. So as we look coming ahead, we see some promising jobs. And if you want to, you can just go to the last slide for that very, very quickly. And well, actually, let's skip that. We'll go right to that. I'll just share those areas: software development, registered nurses, accountants and auditors, project managers, computer system analysts, market research, school teachers of all levels, HR specialists and computer networking are all areas in which we're seeing a brighter future for the upcoming year. So I want to, Amy, and thank you for having me here today to share, and happy to respond if we do have some times for Q&A.
So, Dr. May, we don't have a whole lot of time, but I do have one question to direct to you. What we're hearing right now is the economists are saying that 40% of the jobs that are out there right now will not exist after post-COVID. You've addressed some of the areas that will have. You just listed the jobs that are going to be forthcoming going forward. But do we know, and you kind of talked about the industries and you splayed it out on one of your slides, but do you know here in North Texas, like what specific industries where that 40% would actually hit the hardest? I know hospitality is one, but that will probably bounce back, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think, it's interesting. Of course, we're paying a little more attention to that now, Susan, than we were pre-COVID. But quite honestly, much of it is going to be the same. We were already concerned pre-COVID about the impact of artificial intelligence, machine learning, automated manufacturing, and we were projecting as many as 39% of the workforce were going to need some type of upskilling, training, as it was then. So we're not seeing any change at all in those populations. We're also much like, not quite to the extent of the 08-09 recession, where that was often people reference that as we came out of the recession, you didn't see people returning to work. That was because there was an extensive investment in technology and automated technology during that time. We're still seeing some of that that's happening, and that's really going to open up project management opportunities. It's going to open up opportunities for computer system analysts. Coders are going to be in big demand, as well as short-term industry-based certifications like the Google IT Support Professional Certification, or like the Amazon Web Services Cloud Computing Certification, or even things like Salesforce are going to be in demand as we see that in the going forward.
Very good. We'll ask one more question. This is from one of our board members, Ms. Carolyn Kim. She says, thank you. Dr. May, what, if any, is the long-term plan for the COVID-related programs you mentioned? Will they end once we are in the end phases of the pandemic, or will they morph into a more permanent capacity program?
Yeah, great question. And as we look at this, we don't see, I want to stress here that we don't see this in the same way that we've seen a recession. We do believe when, much like a hurricane hits a geographic area, overnight you see jobs eliminated and new jobs created. It's that quick. And in many ways, that's what's happened here. And those new jobs are going to be around. I think that's why, I've been doing this a very long time. And in the last 11 months, I have probably been asked a single question more times than in all the years combined that I've been in higher ed leadership. And that's what jobs are going to be in demand in the future. I think everybody understands we were already in the midst of a change. It was already happening. COVID accelerated it and has caused that to move more rapidly. And in many ways, the federal dollars that were through the CARES Act, through the stimulus funds and others, have accelerated that themselves by keeping in organizations and individuals with resources, but allowing massive reinvestments in many cases into companies, particularly healthcare related companies I've seen that, and I go into the details of why that's happened. But yes, we see all of those as long term, because we were already seeing pre-pandemic a a lack of equity in who was being left behind by the economy. And these are really equity-based programs designed to bring in individuals who were being left behind, who were disproportionately impacted, and how they can be successful going forward in today's economy.
Right, great. This is so much impact is happening, and I think it's long overdue, to your point. So thank you so much, Dr. Mwbe, for your insight, and we appreciate you. You're amazing, and Dallas College for being such a great partner of ours. I'm going to go ahead and transition into our next segment. I would like to call all of our board members to be present here. I'm going to call your names. This is our 2021 board. We have our past chair, immediate past chair, Ms. Neha Kunde, Mr. Urmil Shah, our chair-elect, Sushma Malhotra, Crystal Rocco, Dennis Kustu, Sarah Hoos, Ann Badmus, Faiz Hussein, Shagarika Perkins, Naeem Ahmad, May Mao, Macy Hyken, Carolyn Kim, Paul Tai, Sean Shu, Lisa Mark, Amy Hofflin, of course, Mohammed Farshuri, Gloria Mather. And I would like to introduce our esteemed guest today. We have Miss Angie Chen Button, who is a Texas State Representative, House Representative, District 112, sorry, which includes portions of Garland, Richardson, Rowlett, and Saxe in Dallas County. She currently serves as the chair of the Economic Development and International Relations Committee and is a member of the Ways and Means Committee. Representative Button worked for Texas Instruments, where she promoted American products internationally and as an international marketing manager. She is also a CPA with master's degrees in public finance and management science. So Representative Button was born in Taipei, Taiwan. As a child, her 7-person family lived in a 300 square foot, one-room hut without a kitchen or running water, my word. She credits education with bringing her a better life. Representative Button met her husband, Darcy, as a graduate student at University of Texas at Dallas. They have lived in Richardson and Garland for 30 years and have their son, Dane, is a Richardson ISD University of Texas graduate. Now, the Button family recently welcomed their arrival of their second grandchild. Congratulations, Angie. That's amazing. Angie's life has been the American dream, Texas style. I love that. Welcome and thank you, Representative Button, for attending today and doing the induction.
Hello, everyone. How are you? I am so excited to be here. And I want first to thank Amy and Susan for inviting me to be a part of this very important event. And I also want to say hi to my dear friend, Dr. Jo Mwbe. Dr. Mwbe and I talk a lot about how to help young people prepare themselves for the challenge, especially after this pandemic. As Susan introduced me, that as I am chairing the Economic Development and International Relations for the Texas House. So definitely Dr. Mwbe's speech and also all the effort he has done, especially during the last 2 years, definitely right on top of what I care for, and it's so dear to my heart. And Dr. Mwbe, you're absolutely right. You all play such an important role for the recovery of our state's economy. Okay, I know that we already had a keynote speech, so I'm not gonna take too much of your time. Let me just get on my my job to to install the wonderful officers. Okay, so dear board members elect, the office which you will soon elect to be is one of the diligent, well, I should say soon you will swear in is one of diligent and importance in accepting this office, and you must have all the heart and passion to serve and fulfill this responsibility. You are charged with the duties of furthering the objectives of the Asian Chamber of Texas with great sincerity and great attitude. Oh, by the way, you all should know that I was the first woman to chair the Greater Dallas Asian American Chamber, which is predecessor. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you. Remember that. Okay, good. And with the policy and the bylaws as your guide, you must be always ready to exercise the functions of the office with which you are entrusted. Further, you are charged with governing this organization according to the laws of democracy, under which every person who wishes to speak shall be heard. Toward the end, that is, every matter considered. The best opinion shall prevail through the expressed will of the majority, and the best course of action followed. And let me first ask you, do you accept this charge?
We do.
Thank you. Everybody else?
Yes.
Let's do that one more time. Everybody else
Yes.
say,
Yes.
I do.
Yes,
Okay, great.
we do.
Great. Okay, so now please raise your right hand and repeat after me. Right after I say first I, and then please state your name, okay? I
Naeem,
Amy Lewis Hofland,
solemnly swear
do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear
That's right, just repeat after me. That's right. Amy's doing a good job. That I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute.
Yeah, everybody, you gotta repeat after me, okay? Otherwise, you don't get to be a board member, okay?
I think y'all can go ahead and go off mute. We can all do it. Let's just try it.
Okay. The
Yeah, let's try it.
Office of Board of Directors,
Office of Board
The
of
Office of Board of
Directors
Directors
okay, of the Asian Chamber of Texas,
of
of the Asian
Asian
Chamber of
Texas.
Texas,
and to the best of my ability,
to
To
the
the
best
and to the best of my ability,
will serve as a living example
will serve as a living example
example
of this organization's philosophy and beliefs.
of this organization's
organization's
philosophies
and
and beliefs.
Okay, now you can put your hand down and let me say congratulations.
Thank you.
Just had a great start and we're proud for you to serve. And please remember what you are gonna do is very important, especially extremely important in this pandemic recovery environment, because we need leaders like you in a wonderful nonprofit chamber organization like the Asian Chamber of Texas to help us to recover from the pandemic situation. And once again, always gain the #1 title for Texas. So thank you for having me and have a wonderful afternoon and have a wonderful year. And once again, Amy and Susan, thank you for inviting me.
Thank
you
you
so
for
much.
joining us. It's
Yes.
such a pleasure and an honor to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for all
you.
your hard work over the next few weeks in session. Thank you,
Yes,
Representative Utley.
absolutely. So now as we're transitioning, Divya, do we have time for the DISD video?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna just take a couple minutes break. We wanted to feature one of our our esteemed sponsors today, DISD, MWBE department. So we're going to stop for a minute and show you that video and then come back and we'll go to our next segment.
Dallas ISD's MWBE department was established in our board policy CH Local, and the purpose is to ensure the inclusion of minority and women-owned companies in all aspects of our purchasing and contracting activities. I will contribute the success of our MWBE program to servant leadership. Those two words come to mind. It takes a village of servant leaders to help to support and undergird a successful MWBE program.
The things for MWBs to ensure that they're involved in the bidding process is one, to get registered as a supplier with the Dallas Independent School District. It's on the district's purchasing page and it's run through our supplier portal. It's a self-service portal in which you would complete the information and you would pick your commodity codes for Dallas ISD. So when a bid opportunity comes up, you'll receive the advertisement from the notification from purchasing, letting you know that there's a bid that kind of fits your scope of work. The main part I would encourage you is to be certified with multiple agencies. We utilize a lot of times the North Central Texas Regional Certification Agency database and the Texas Hub database when sending out those bid notifications.
We are a large entity and we do large projects. We need companies that can come in and actually do those large projects. Some of the things I've seen to be successful is individuals or companies coming in and actually partnering with one another. And that's helping these small MWBEs to be able to take on some of the larger projects that we have here at Dallas ISD.
I urge you to come, partake of these unlimited opportunities, and again, at the end of the day, we're here to support our students.
Great, we are back. Thank you so much for that. DISD, we appreciate you and everything that you do for our members and for the community at large, for small businesses. Your MWBE program has always been extremely active and just, you know, so present and wanting to help the small businesses, minority businesses, and we appreciate everything that you do here. And thank you again for being our partner. But as we're moving into our next segment, I want to take a minute just to discuss, you know, the importance of what we're discussing on education. Of course, you know, Dr. May's conversation just a minute ago stressed the importance of education and continuing education. And so this conversation is about, you know, our not just primary education, middle school and high school, going into higher education. So on that note, I want to introduce our moderator for this panel, Ms. Mita Havlick. Say hello. Mita serves as the executive director of the Dallas Education Foundation, which is the nonprofit philanthropic partner of Dallas ISD. With degrees in physics, wow, computer science, and varied career in technology, project and program management and consulting, Mita has chosen to lend her analytical and communication skills to the nonprofit and public education ecosystem. As an active community member and public education advocate, Mita has worked over the last 15 years to help improve the quality of life of our North Texas educational neighbors and advance educational opportunities for all students within the public education framework of Dallas ISD. Previous to Dallas ISD, or Dallas Education Foundation, Mita was the executive director of Emmanuel Community Center in Old East Dallas. She also served as the the chairperson of Superintendent Dr. Hinojosa's district-wide advisory council, tongue twister there, and a longtime volunteer at her children's schools. So, you know, Mita leads the Dallas Education Foundation with a focus on its core values of stewardship, integrity, equity, collaboration, transparency, and sustainability. Mita, welcome, and thank you for leading this conversation. We appreciate you. Go ahead and take the stage, please.
No, absolutely. And first of all, I want to thank everybody for attending today. I think I'm imagining, especially if you're in the DFW area, that you're huddled up in front of your fireplace like our friend Amy was, or maybe with a blanket. Unfortunately, our panelists do not have that pleasure today or that privilege, but I am so excited to be moderating today. I expect my role to be really more in the background. I'm not the subject matter expert here. These three individuals are, and in a moment I'll ask each of them to introduce themselves. But you know what I will be doing because of time is we have a number of topics we want to get through today, including workforce and employability, equity, teacher, teacher accessibility, all of that stuff if we have time. And we will also want to take audience questions, participant questions. So I may move the discussion along if we're focused on one subject, but really I will really be in the background. With that, I would love to start and just have you each maybe take 2 minutes and introduce yourselves and tell us how do you fit into our education framework and our ecosystem. And Rebecca Good of Legacy Preparatory Charter School, I'm going to start with you because you are in my Brady Bunch square right next to me. So take yourself off mute and let's get started.
Thank you. Thank you for the pleasure of being on with such esteemed company. I am Dr. Rebecca Good, Superintendent, CEO, founder of Legacy Preparatory Charter Academy. We are STEM academies. We've been around for 9 years. We serve minority populations in some of the toughest parts of town. I grew up in Latin America and Asia. When I came here, I was a Spanish-speaking future bilingual teacher, and I was my claim to fame in Dallas ISD is I was year 1 alternative certification program. And that was in 1986. So I'm a longtime educator now. I've done almost every job there is, and including higher ed. And so I know a little bit about school and about kids and working with the population in our area. And so I'm happy to come here and help further that discussion around what is best for our kids who are now have got the pandemic on top of their normal poverty struggles.
No, absolutely. And I think as Dr. Mwbe said, the challenges were great for our students before the pandemic and are definitely even more so now. So I'm looking forward to including you in the discussion. And with that, I'm going to move over to the next square, and that'll be Robin Bullock, and she is the superintendent of Allen ISD. So if you could just tell us a few words, Robin, that'd be great.
Sure, thank you. Well, thank you for having me today. As Rebecca said, I've been in education for a long time. This is my 26th year. And so I have been in Allen ISD since 2013. So this is going on just about my 8th year. And, 26 years in education, you see a lot. Like Rebecca, I've done a variety of roles from teacher to principal and assistant principal to central office roles, with the exception of higher ed. She and I probably have the same career pathway, but I'm excited, as she said, to just be a part of this conversation and to engage with the community and answer any questions, hopefully, that people have. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being a part of today's discussion. And then Dr. Bill King, I'm going to have you round us out with an introduction of yourself.
Well, good afternoon. It's humbling not only to be on this panel, but to hear Dr. Mwbe, who's a living legend in higher education in the United States, and of course, our Representative Angie Chen Button. She's a legend as well. So I'm very humbled to be part of this conversation. Just putting it bluntly, I'm a product of the community college system. I'm very blessed to work for Collin County Collin College, not community college. I've been employed here 4.5 years. I worked for Tyler Junior College for 8 years, but primarily my background has been in manufacturing. I spent over 20 years in the private sector. So I've only been in higher education 12 years. And so I was asked to be the inaugural campus CEO, Provost of the new Collin College Technical Campus in Allen. And also I've assumed responsibilities for our Courtyard Center, which in West Plano, which is our continuing education campus, our Small Business Development Center, and also our grants. I'm responsible for grants, and also our corporate college. And so the reason that I changed careers so abruptly 12 years ago is because I wanted to help transform lives. Being a product of the community college system has paid dividends for me. It solidified and helped me gain confidence that being a first generation college student, that I was college capable and college ready. And it gave me that time to mature academically. And so I wanted to spend the rest of my career serving others and helping transform lives.
Well, thank you. And thank you for doing that. And I'd really like to start, if it's all right with the three of you, with really kind of transitioning from what Dr. Joe May had really talked about, which is, employability. What's really fascinating is that what I love about today's panel is that you're coming into today's discussion from varied student populations, from a charter school with different demographics and Allen ISD, and then of course the college itself. So the World Economic Forum predicts that 65% of primary school children will be employed in jobs that don't even exist yet. Isn't that crazy when you think about that? So tell us, how are your schools preparing our students for the unknown? And part of that is we're in such a STEM-dominated present, and I'm sure in a STEM-dominated future. So tell us, in addition to that, how do the arts and humanities still have a place in the STEM-dominated future and present? And Robin, if it's okay, I would like to start with you. You have all the grade levels and you have the young ones who don't even know how they're going to be employed yet. What are you going to be when you grow up? I think the answer, I don't know, is pretty adequate. And then Rebecca, I think I'll swing it over to you because you have similar student grade levels, obviously. And then Bill, round us out with, okay, they're in college now, and now what are they going to do? So Robin?
Absolutely. That's great. And I tell you, our pre-K kiddos say that for sure, but I have a sophomore and he says the same thing. And so it's a struggle for sure. But, schools aren't held in the same way that they were 30, 40 years ago. And, it's not the platform where the teacher stands up in front of the classroom anymore, imparting her knowledge or his knowledge to students. We've got to, and we do in Allen, find ways to really encourage students to collaborate and, really engage in problem solving and teamwork. We've recognized the shift and really fairly recently where we've updated our campuses through our campus renovations to really create intentional spaces for our students to be able to problem solve and work as a team. We focus heavily on the engineering design process. It was mentioned earlier about failure. We think failure is a good thing, and that's how kids learn. And, so just the fact that, like you said, we don't know what jobs exist. So being technical in our approach and trying to make sure that kids know content is obviously very important, but at the same time, those skills that really equip them to be productive citizens in the future, where they're employable, and jobs, as you said, that we don't even know are out there. And, going to your second part of that STEM dominated culture or future, we opened our STEAM Center here in Allen a little bit ago, and it actually sits right next to the Collin College Technical Center. So we have a great partnership with Collin College through some various certifications and opportunities that our kids haven't had in the past. But one thing I think is really important is because we talk a lot about STEM, and of course, we started at a very young age. I went into the STEAM Center the other day and I saw 10th and 11th graders, and then I walked into one other section and 5th graders were over there designing and working through some processes with some an activity. And then I went on to an elementary campus and I went into a kindergarten class, and they were building mazes for their hex bugs. And so really looking at that art aspect of it, we thought it was really intentional. It's not called a STEM center, it's called a STEAM center. And that arts infusion is really important to us. People ask us all of the time if we teach art over there. Art classes are not over there. We've got graphic design, interior design, things like that. But we really feel like that through that creativity and through that opportunities that we provide students to collaborate and work together, that humanities, that arts naturally comes from doing so.
That's great. So if I'm hearing this right, it's these life skills really is what you're focusing on, right? Collaboration and critical thinking skills and problem solving and all of that. So Rebecca, I I would assume that you guys, your approach is fairly similar, but can you add on to that? Are there other aspects?
Sure. One of the things that many people don't really know about the state of Texas is that our legislators several sessions ago really restructured our graduation program to be endorsement based and really CTE, career technology based. And so our kids, and this is one of my pushes, I do podcasts every week, and I really sort of chide parents and saying, you need to know what your secondary kids are being taught and having to select, because really our high schools are more like junior colleges now. They in 8th grade, they have to select what their endorsement is going to be for high school. Then they have pathway courses that fulfill that endorsement. And if you as a 10th grader decide in your second semester that you don't like your endorsement, you've got to decide, your parents have got to sign off on the fact that you're going to start over on a new endorsement and take the 9th and 10th grade pathway courses that lead to that endorsement so that you could graduate hopefully on time. I say all this so that people understand there is a huge movement in Texas to graduate our kids career and college ready. And matter of fact, again, I will say that most people don't know that schools are held under the gun, that most of our kids better graduate college ready or vocational school ready or military ready. And we have to track them for 2 years to make sure that they are in one of those, or the district gets dinged. And so there's a pathway, I believe it's that 60% of our kids graduate with one of those in 2030, I believe. And so there's a very strong, strict expectation on the part of Texas Education Agency that we are going to graduate our kids. And of course, we can't just graduate them. We have to prepare them starting in elementary, right? In elementary to graduate college and career ready. And oftentimes that means that when they graduate, they're graduating already with certifications. They're graduating with sometimes more than now an associate's degree. It is amazing what our public schools are doing that we get so little credit for, right? I really want to make sure that I go on record by really letting people know that there's a huge movement, mostly behind them because they're not aware of this, to graduate our kids from all economic levels, by the way. The schools in the tough parts of town, we don't get a slide, okay? Just like the federal government did not give us a slide during the pandemic on testing and making sure that our special need kids and our second language kids got paid attention to and got their services even while virtually at home last year and now this year if they're home. We have got to be paying attention to those kids, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because the federal government, the state governments are all watching schools to make sure that we pay the proper attention to our kids so that they will graduate with more than an hourly wage job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know what, equity is definitely one of the things that economically challenged populations is definitely one of the topics we want to cover today. So thank you for kind of leading us into that discussion. But before we get there, you know, Dr. King, Bill, if you don't mind, I think what's really interesting about what you do is clearly you're preparing our kids, your students, for a workforce needs that are out there today. But programmatically, you have to figure out, what about these jobs that you don't even know about, right? I mean, how are you going to prepare your programming and your students for these jobs? And again, going back to that humanities questions, where do the arts and the humanities play? Is it all strictly career and technical education, or is there more to it?
No, you're absolutely correct. In fact, I was this morning, you know, when we were in the middle of this ice storm, I was on a phone call with General Motors in Michigan, and we were talking about one of their active programs. And whenever I assumed responsibility for the technical campus, Dr. Neil Mackin, by the way, our district president, this campus was his vision. It was not part of our original 2015 master plan because we were not serving our local service area. Our students were having to leave our service area to achieve this technical education. And so when I was on that call with General Motors this morning, they said just recently their chief executive officer, she made a statement that by 2035, that all of their vehicles will be 100% electric. Mm-hmm. And so it is so key for my college and Brookhaven and other colleges that offer technical education in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that we build and cultivate these corporate partnerships. Toyota, who's just down 121, has been a huge partner for us early on. You know, we've only been in existence since last fall. We just started this brand new campus. So Toyota, Train Technologies, Siemens, we're working with Ford and General Motors and others, other local companies, and to help and ensure that our students always have access to the latest technology. And so those partnerships are key. But, you know, I did want to mention, I just read an article recently that I did want to talk about that, you know, in education, especially in technical education, we have a tendency in the curriculum to silo our students into a certain content area. And with the, when we design this campus, we have built spaces, open air spaces in between what we call trade bars for all of our trades to come together to work on projects. And so we have shared build areas where our HVAC, our welding, our construction, our engineering field of study students, industrial automation students can all come together and work on projects. So we don't pigeonhole any of our students into you know, academic silos. Another thing we need to do is ensure that we are creating lifelong learners. You know, I continue to seek professional development every year, like most of us do, and that helps build a pipeline into our continuing education programs that we offer at all community colleges across the United States. Because let's face it, on an annual basis, skill sets change from year to year. And the last thing is, in that article, it talked about how important it was, and this may be the most important element, is to build a meta skill within our students, embedded in our curriculum. And what that means is the ability to adapt and change. So many of us don't like change. We're apprehensive about change, but we have to be able to teach our students and model our students and mentor our students to accept change throughout their career.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and the last thing, the arts is very important. 15 hours of our 60-hour AAS degrees are dedicated to core classes, and part of that is humanities. So in every AAS program, it's not just technical, you know, coursework or academics. You know, we're trying to develop the whole student as well.
No, that's great. And I have to say, I'm thrilled to hear that. I mean, I have a very arts-focused senior in high school and humanities focused. So it's good to know that one day he will be employable, even with maybe his degree in philosophy or whatever he's aiming for at the moment. But just to quickly summarize, I love how each of you had your different perspectives. Robin, you really came in from those life skills and collaboration. And then Rebecca, yours was, you know, you included the legislative priorities, right? And making sure that endorsements and all the stuff that TEA mandates, the Texas Education Agency mandates, that it also addresses the needs of our students. And Bill, again, I think partnerships was really one of the things that you really focused on, as well as being nimble, right? Making sure that it's constantly moving and you just don't get set in your ways. And I love how each of you is focused on the art. So thank you for that. You know, you had talked about equity a bit, Rebecca, when you had made your comments. So let's just dive into that. And, you know, the word equity, especially racial equity, you know, these are terms that are really at the forefront of almost every policy conversation that I'm involved in, especially when it comes to education, and for good reason, right? And each of your organizations serves a varied population and varied demographics. So my question to each of you, and Rebecca, I'll start with you, and then probably go to Bill and then Robin, just to mix it up a little bit. But so Rebecca, start us off with, what are you doing in your system, in your organization, with intention to confront and address racial equity within your systems? And how do you really ensure access to quality education and resources for students of varied ethnicities and varied economic situations and communities of color? So it's a big question. Equity, what are you doing?
Well, first of all, we hire intentionally with people who look like our kids. We are about 4 or 5% Anglo. The rest is Hispanic, African American, and Asian. And so we are one of the few North Texas districts that has been primarily minority staff for almost, I think, from the beginning. And that is, again, intentional. I'll go to Puerto Rico, I go to Spain to get teachers, bilingual teachers, because we're all fighting over the same small pool here in the North Texas area. And so I'm very intentional in that way, because we have a dual language program, English, Spanish, and Chinese at our district. And so we start Chinese and Spanish starting in early childhood grades all the way up. And so I must have those staff members. It's not only teachers, you notice, I don't say teachers, I say staff members, leadership. My leadership is mostly minority. That's number one. Number two is training, always training, always. We have an ethnic, racial ethnicity workforce, and we meet regularly and we talk about what we can do to make sure that we are being less biased and that we are less anti-racist ourselves. And then we work it, how is our curriculum, right? Telling the whole story. We are a PBL district. We don't have textbooks. We're device oriented. We always have, which made our being able to go to virtual learning a 1 week opportunity back in March, because we were already online doing our projects. And those soft skills that Robin talked about, that's our life. Engineering is elementary, is in our K-5. So we live that. And so making sure that on top of all of the academic strands that we embed the anti-racist bias that we know, well, that we train our staff to understand that they have, because that's hard. It's hard, especially for our white staff, to admit that they have bias that they then bring into their curriculum. And so that is a very grown-up topic that is not a one-time training. It is a ongoing, multi-year, we've never stopped. I don't know when we ever will stop having that type of training, where we really work, especially now with our teachers who are writing the projects, the PBL projects, to understand that they've got to look at their materials with the eyes of their kids. If you're a white teacher, please, are you looking at a male-centric, white-centric curriculum? Because that's the way it's written by the publisher? And if so, how are you going to help kids? You notice help kids. The kids are discovering the rest of the story at that time, right? And so what were the other populations during that time? And that makes for fascinating discussion with the kids. It's very empowering for the kids to understand the rest of the story that they themselves discover through their research.
That's great. So with intention is really, from what I understand, you're saying is teacher development, teacher training, because that's where it starts in the classroom.
And hiring.
And what the teacher is delivering to his or her students. So great. So Bill, give us a perspective from a higher ed, what are you guys doing with intention to serve those varied populations focused on racial equity?
Diversity and inclusion is obviously a very important part of what we do at Collin College. It's very unusual anyone would have a chance to start with a clean slate and hire a completely brand new staff to start, a large campus. So that was one of my key elements that I concentrated on. 3 of my 4 direct reports are minority, and 11 of the 15 of all of my senior leaders in my entire organization are minority. We focused heavily on having a diverse group. We have 5 that are bilingual that are at the technical campus to serve our growing Hispanic population. We have 2 Asian Americans on my leadership team, and 1 at the continuing education campus and 1 here. Dr. Tripit Mwbe, who leads our engineering field of study programs. And so we wanted to help mirror the students that we were going to serve. And so we're still in the development of learning our students. We're only in the 2nd semester of existence, but we wanted to make sure we were setting a firm foundation to support diversity and inclusion here at the technical campus. And that we're also doing that throughout the district as well. So it's so important that, we focus on that, because everything that you see going on today. And, one of the things that when we focus on hiring, I focus on, like, one of my directors, and his name is Sean Smith, and Sean's African-American. When Sean interviewed for his position, he was equally qualified educationally, except he did not have the experience of the other 2 candidates. But because of his life story and because of his passion, we looked well beyond that experience level of what he would bring to potential students. It's not just what's on a resume that counts. It's what can they bring to the table. And as senior leaders, we owe that, and to ensure that we are diverse and we do include all of our future students, that we look beyond what's just on a resume.
Yeah, that's great. Again, hiring, making sure that there's diversity included everywhere. And so, Robin, I'm going to switch it up a little bit, because out of the other two organizations, you truly have a pie with multiple slices that are fairly evenly sized when it comes to demographics relative to ethnicities and race. So again, with intention, what about addressing some of those ethnicities in terms of, do you host any minority heritage months through curriculum, Black Heritage Month, Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage, Hispanic? Are there anything that you're doing programmatically that really creates that equity, racial equity and awareness and cultural awareness perspective?
Yes, there is, but there's always room for improvement. I'll start by saying that very, very quickly. To your point, a lot of people don't know this. We have over 72 languages spoken in Allen ISD. So to your point, we are very diverse. We've had in the past educational opportunities for kiddos to showcase their diversity, where they can sing songs, perform, dance. It's super popular when we do it in the district. It's called our Diversity Showcase. We've got a diversity committee that we really wanted to look at over the summer and kind of revamp and revitalize just a little bit. And we actually kind of were a little bit more strategic with it going into this school year, and we expanded it a little bit. And so it's actually called the Diversity and Inclusion Team. And it's got administrators and teachers. It's got parents on it. And then we included some students, which has shed a whole new light on some things. And so, when you get student voice at the table, it changes the conversation. And so we always like to do that. And so we had the opportunity to really expand coming into this school year. The things that they're focused on this school year are culture and values, the professional learning you mentioned, the student learning, recruitment and retention, and then community engagement and communication. And so just as Rebecca and Bill described, recruitment and retention is something that we struggle with, and that we are always looking to improve. To be honest, our Asian staff does not mirror our student population, as many other ethnicities don't as well. So really trying to build out an employee profile and to be more inclusive and to recognize those biases that Rebecca mentioned. All of our administrators have gone through unconscious bias training. Our principals and assistant principals and our counselors have done it at the beginning of this year. And so that's something that we continue to focus on. We know the importance of having a diverse staff. We know what it means. We hear students talk about, I don't ever get to see somebody in a classroom, as a teacher who looks like me. And so that is something that we continue to really try to strive to be better in.
Well, great. Thank you. And again, it's to me, what I'm hearing is it's so important to have a diverse set of teachers who are then trained appropriately to recognize either their own biases or to teach culturally relevant material. So that's great. Thank you. I love that that's a consistent message, which to me sounds like it's the right approach. Since we're talking about teachers, I'll just segue over to that, and then we'll probably lead it, full circle into parents. We've talked about students, we'll talk about teachers, and then we'll talk about parents at the end. There is, as you mentioned, there is no doubt that great teachers are the primary determinant when it comes to, the future success of our students. So you talked a little bit about how you're developing your teachers and inspiring them to, stay within the system. What can you do to encourage more young people to enter into public education or even higher education? What can we do? What can you do? What are you doing to promote the great aspects of having a career in education? You guys are lifelong educators, so there's something in there, right? Something that is drawing you and keeping you in there. So Robin, I'm going to start this one off with you, if that's all right. You mentioned 20 some years, which you must have been a baby when you started in the industry. So we'll start with you.
Okay, perfect. Well, no, you know, the thing that I think that really, and I'll speak for me personally, you know, just having that impact and, you know, being a servant leader and being service oriented, I think is so very important. And we tend to kind of get away from that in certain times, but really being connected to your community and having that servant heart. I think that we've got to develop that in kids, because I think that that is where you get your best teachers from. Somebody who's willing to give their time, give their energy. Teaching is extremely hard work. You know, walking into classrooms and seeing, you know, 20 kindergartners running around, or a first grade teacher trying to, you know, teach a kiddo to read. You know, it is so challenging. And I think parents experienced a little bit of that when we switched so quickly to remote learning in the spring. And it really highlighted, and as everybody was, you know, very appreciative of the work of teachers, it was celebrated on social media and everywhere else, because I don't know that people truly understand how hard this profession is. And so just to continually to support teachers, you know, going specifically, we've got a teacher prep program here in Allen ISD. It's not a huge program, but we do have one. And so they work with some of our youngest learners. We've got a PALS program that we have where we've got high school students pairing up with elementary students. Since our elementary schools are configured in a kindergarten to sixth grade configuration, you have a lot of opportunity for those sixth graders to really go down and have conversations with, you know, your younger elementary kids. So really just developing that sense of heart and service is something that we need to continue to focus on here in Allen for sure.
Great, thank you. And Bill, I guess your challenges from a teaching perspective are a little bit different, because, you know, your students know how to read. They're probably not crying in a corner necessarily, unless the test was really hard, I suppose. But yeah, how are you managing teacher recruitment, right? I mean, it's, as all of you mentioned, there are lots of teaching voids out there, and how are you getting them in the door? How are you encouraging your young people to eventually go into the teaching profession?
This is just great timing and a great question, because, you know, one of the greatest concerns that I have is always making sure we have world-class faculty. I know that's either, you know, if you compare ISDs, universities, or community colleges, you know, you don't get rich being in higher education, right? So, you know, one of the things that we've done in several of our programs, we had the benefit of starting our construction management and our HVAC program early 3 years ago. And some of our programs just started in the fall. But we already have former students coming back to teach for us. And so we spend, and I tell our professors, you're the first line of defense. Part of what we do each and every day should be cultivating new professors or future professors that are going to come back and teach at Collin College. And so we have several HVAC professors that started in our program. And it all starts with, you know, our professors. They're a first line of defense from a recruitment standpoint, a retention standpoint, and then developing that love for higher education. I'll be honest with you, the reason I'm in higher education is because of the president at Trinity Valley Community College in Athens, Jerry King. Dr. King, who I'm not kin to, but Jerry was one of my teachers. He's an economics professor. And I saw his passion and his love, and he gave me my first job at a shoe store, at a sporting goods store. And so he took a vested interest in me. And so that's why I'm serving today. I can't, servant leadership is what it's all about. But just instilling that passion and instilling that servant's, developing the whole student, instilling that servant's heart. And that's how you cultivate potential future professors.
Thank you. And and Rebecca, since you talked a little bit about the legislature and the legislature priority with school funding and school finance reform recently, both Robin and Bill mentioned in their own way, you don't get to be a billionaire by being a teacher necessarily, right? However, I would say with the last passage of the school reform, finance reform, pre-K through 12, there are opportunities for teachers to make more than what was traditionally thought of from an education perspective What are your thoughts on that? Is that helping? Is that not even part of the issue? It's more of that servant leadership and what's
Well, it is. It's a huge part of the issue, but that House Bill 3 did not solve that at all. $3,000 if the teacher got that, and the counselors, nurses, I believe, librarians, and teachers. Robin, correct me if I missed one, but $3,000 is not going to make or break somebody from deciding to be a teacher, not to be a teacher. Let me read you a couple titles from articles. I'm starting to, in my free time soon, I don't know,
Monday,
I'm going to write an article about this upcoming perfect storm. The data tells us teacher salaries have been declining for years. The teacher shortage is real, large, and growing, and worse than we thought. The first report in the perfect storm in the teacher labor markets. Now, these articles were written right before the pandemic. Okay. And so if you've been reading articles on teachers and their angst and their lack of feeling valued since the pandemic, we have a real crisis that is on our hands. We already have lots of teachers talking about retiring, if they haven't already, retiring at the end of this school year. We have teachers who don't feel valued because they didn't get to be considered a frontline vaccine taker. There's lots of signals that tell us that educators are not yet valued the way they should, at least not enough to encourage lots of people to want to become a teacher or change their career to be a teacher. The alternative certification programs are having trouble finding staff. The teacher colleges are having trouble finding kids who want to come. And the parents aren't helping us because data is showing us that we have 50% decline in parents encouraging their kids to become teachers in the last 40 years. So we're in trouble. And what can we do from a legislative standpoint? I have a podcast I do every week, and I mention this because the whole point of my podcast is get everybody, even if you don't have kids, to become a public education advocate. We've got to make sure our legislators fund public education to the point where people want to stay, where people feel valued, where we have enough money to not only meet the kids' needs, but also meet the needs of the teachers. And so there's a lot that will be coming up, and you heard it here first, that is going to cause us to some real hair pulling in the public ed K-12 arena if we don't get this solved. And I'm not seeing, Robin, are you seeing this solved or people talking about solving this teacher value issue that we have going?
Not that you hit it right on the head. Not that I've heard. We've had probably, to your point, everything that you said is what we're experiencing in Allen.
Yeah, and subs. Oh, don't get me started about subs.
Elevating the profession, right? Elevating the perception, the compensation, the appreciation. And I think, I believe, Robin, you were the one who said in this pandemic, parents totally get what it's like. Well, no, they don't totally get. They get a taste of what it's like to be an educator, and it's not easy. And unfortunately, the pay scale has not necessarily kept up with that. But I would say, sometimes I think that's more of a Texas thing as well. I mean, there are other states out there that fund public education differently than Texas does. And so I think legislatively, I agree with you, Rebecca, there's so much more we can do to pressure our legislators to not only compensate our educators and our teachers and prioritize them, but make them feel appreciated and definitely elevate the profession.
Well, the vaccine would have been a great opportunity had we from the get-go said to our educators, oh, you need to be right after those healthcare workers. Yeah. Oh, goodness gracious. The status and value that our teachers and educators would have felt, because it's not just teachers, by the way, custodians, lunch people, they're in front of more of our kids than many of our teachers, because we tend to isolate our teachers and make sure that they only are in front of a small amount of kids in case one of them gets sick and we got to send them home, right? But when a custodian gets sick or when a food service gets sick, then oftentimes we have to shut down a whole school. So those people are important too. Lots of messages could have been sent to educators and the people who work for schools, and it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, and absolutely, this is a situation where we need to encourage our children, our friends, even folks who are retired, maybe want to get their teaching certificate and go into the education space. So it's not just for the college graduate, right? Teaching can be at all different levels. but it's not easy, I think, as everyone has certainly found out. So, you know what, we talked about parents not finding it easy necessarily to teach in a Zoom-based world. So let's move on to kind of a different topic, which is parental agency. And, you know, the Asian community specifically, you know, I'm an immigrant as well, and from India. And, you know, my parents, when they brought us here, education was their ticket, right? That's what got my dad here in the United States, his engineering degree. And so, especially in the Asian American community, you know, parents see that as the ticket for their kids to future success and to prosperity, and which is great, right? We want parents with agency, and we want kids that have greater prosperity. And absolutely, almost without dispute, you can say that parental involvement is necessary for the success of a student, absolutely. But isn't there a fine line between driving elite academic success and then maybe even putting some pressures on our kids where there's some unintended consequences, right? And some of those unintended consequences can be depression, could be issues at home, it could be you know, even drug abuse like Adderall or hyper, you know, caffeine intake and things like that. So this is a tough question, right? But I'm going to ask you guys as leaders of your, you know, educational institutions, what can we do as parents? Where is that balance of, in a highly competitive environment, how do we encourage our students to do the best they can, but not put so much pressure on them that they suffer? So, you know, if you don't mind, Robin, I'd like to start with you again, because you have such a pie slice, and I think you have a large Asian American community.
Sure. You know, that is a huge concern. And one thing that you didn't mention that I know that you probably are aware of is suicide. You know, unfortunately, and very obviously awful. And I think there's a balance. I mean, I think that you have high expectations for kids. As a school district, we have a high expectations for all of our students. So as a parent, you know, just like you said, I mean, I know the importance of education because I've been in the field for so long. But an education it's you know, knowledge is power, and all of the things that you hear. And you know, but to really be able as a parent to find that balance. Kids are under so much pressure socially, you know, the technology and the internet and their phones and all that they have to deal with just from a social perspective is very different from what we had to deal with. You know, one thing happens and, you know, 50,000, you know, 40,000 people know about it, you know, quickly or whatever. And so, you know, there is a balance. And you mentioned, you know, the Adderall and things like that. We've seen that before in Allen, where kids are trying to get, you know, stay up late to study for that test because they're trying to compete for that class rank and GPA. And, you know, I think that academic pressure is, like I said, is I think you have to find a healthy balance because it can be very detrimental to the health and well-being of kiddos. You know, we really focus on, especially within the last year or two, you know, that social emotional learning for kids. We have got to teach them to be able to de-escalate themselves. We've got to teach them to be able to recognize when they feel like things are spinning out of control or that they are having an issue coping and how they can adapt to that. Because at some point, you know, they are going to struggle. And, you know, we've mentioned failure a couple of times now. They are going to fail, and how they react to that is so very important. So just, you know, from a parent perspective or parents who may be listening on the call today, you know, really making sure that you find that balance, because I hope, you know, Dr. King will add to and get on this, that, you know, GPA and class rank is not everything. You know, I get, you know, what comes with that, you know, money and scholarships tied to that. But at the same time, we've had lots of conversations with admissions office, and they're looking for that well-rounded student who can do the things we talked about. You know, they can problem solve and they can communicate and collaborate, and they are involved in extracurricular activities. And so, you know, having an opportunity to have leadership roles and community service. I mean, those are hopefully some things that we'll start to see being brought to the forefront as far as admission goes, because that's something that can become a very dangerous habit for our students if they are pressed and pushed to the limits where they don't feel like that they can operate without, you know, a drug or Adderall or, you know, whatever else. And the alternative to them not being able to cope in some situations can be dire.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like your call to action to parents is really try to meet your child where they are, right? And understand what their needs are, and not
have conversations with them. You've got to talk to them, and you can't accept, oh, good for the, you know, you ask them how their day was and they're going to reply good. And so, you know, you just can't accept that for an answer. You've really got to talk to them and engage with them. And it's very difficult now, especially with technology and gaming and all of the things that they want to be involved in. But it's really important to take that time to sit down and have conversations with them, because they are struggling with things that we did not struggle with when we were going through school.
No, absolutely right. And I would say even when I was younger, again, grew up in an immigrant house, and I remember coming home. I was young. I came home with a 98 on a test, blew away, you know, the class, and came home and told my parents, and my dad, the first thing he said was, well, what happened to the other 2 points? Mm-hmm. That's a lot of pressure. Absolutely. And, you know, 40 years later, I still remember that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Bill, okay. So, you know, I think sometimes the perception is if a student or a child is in college, they're there because they want to be.
Right.
I would argue sometimes they're there because they feel like they have to be, or that they were told to be. So how do you deal with that? I mean, you probably don't deal with parents as much, but you certainly perhaps see that in your students.
Yeah, mental health is a huge topic of concern in higher education today, not only at the community college level, but at the university level as well. And at Collin College, we spend a great deal of time and resources on ensuring that we have counseling services at every campus. Even though my campus is only designed for 7,100 students, I still have the full cadre of services for our students here that we would have at one of our much larger campuses. But, you know, the most experience that I have in this area is residence life. In a previous at Tyler Junior College, I led 10 residence halls and 1,200 students on campus. So it was a microcosm of society. And when I first took it over, I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. And students, you know, the suicide attempts and just the drug abuse and the things, you know, was mind blowing. And so, you know, our strategy is that you have to get to know your students, either in the classroom or from a residence life perspective. You know, your RAs and RDs have to build a relationship with each and every student, because there are students that suffer and they want to solely focus on the academic side. And it's so important from a higher ed perspective that we develop the whole student. You know, we teach them that service, you know, concept as well, but also, you know, having student services and student affairs involved, where students have outlets. They have basketball games, they have football games, they have events. There's programming that get the students out of their rooms. You know, we would focus and we would talk in our staff meetings about, hey, this student is just staying in their room all the time. We would focus on that student about getting them out of their room purposely to make sure that, you know, everything from a health perspective, mental health perspective was good with them. But, you know, it takes a village when you do this. And, you know, you need a whole cadre of services, because when you're at the college level, you see drug abuse, you see mental illness, you see everything. And these students some of them are tops academically, even at the community college level. And so it's a great, you know, we're putting forth a great effort to try to solve that problem.
Well, and it sounds like with intention. So that's what's really important with that. And Rebecca, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to just so we can kind of round out the conversation. You have, from what I understand, you have a couple different campuses, and the demographics of each is very different, right, in terms of student population and parent population. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I would guess that one of your schools probably has more parental involvement in agency versus the other. And what do you do to encourage other parents really to take hold and to be a part of their child's academic success?
Well, of course, the pandemic has certainly helped us, because I started having online parent meetings, which we'd had parent meetings at school, And that was sort of hit and miss. But when we started doing them online and people really wanted to hear more of what was going on, that forced them to have much better cell phone and email addresses, right? And so as we had more online, and we were doing this every other week there for a while, and I was having one in English and one in Spanish because I'm bilingual, that really helped to bring the district and the community together, both campuses really, because we had English speakers on both campuses. We had Spanish speakers at both campuses. But one of my campuses is 87 low social, and the other one in Plano, actually, interestingly enough, is 65% low socioeconomic, and it's predominantly African-American. It didn't used to be predominantly African-American. It used to be predominantly Hispanic. But as we have gotten better at meeting the needs of our kids and using restorative practice as our discipline technique, it has not only attracted more African-American students, but it has attracted more boys. We actually have a skewed demographic, which we've never had before, which is mostly boys. Well, I say mostly, more boys. And again, African-American boys, because somehow we have taken all that training and all that diversity and anti-racism and all of that and actually implement it to the point where we have shifted our campus to be predominantly African-American. And I say predominantly, it's 40% versus 35% Hispanic and then white and Asian. So saying all that also to remind everyone that the different cultures have different approaches to mental health resources and even help. And so what we've had to do is become very savvy in helping parents in receiving these mental health, mental supports that are, you know, their kids are sending us messages, they're sending our teachers messages that they need, and getting the adults in some of these cultural communities to accept the help. And oftentimes the grandparents are our toughest nuts to crack as far as allowing their children and grandchildren to get help. And so those are all lessons learned that we've had. And it's having to do with making sure our counselors look like them, making sure counselors speak the same language. We have those social workers, the community liaisons that speak that same language so that we can get help. We've lost children to suicide because we couldn't get them help long enough because of the parents or the grandparents. So those are all things that the different communities have taught us as district leaders to get better at.
Yeah, no, and you bring up such a great point, which is, again, this is not a one-size-fits-all model with mental support, mental illness and mental health support, right? Because different cultures come into this from different perspectives, and that's such a great way to frame this. And again, I love that because you're dealing. It's very different than when I was in school, right? It was very blanket oriented, and it sounds to me like education from a pre-K all the way to, you know, our colleges are looking at kids as individuals rather than as just, you know, as a group, as a cohort. So I'm going to take some questions from the chat, if that's okay with you guys. And we're running up against our time, and if anyone does have a question, if you want to just go and put your question into the Q&A, and we'll try to get to them. But so Bill, this one's actually directed to you, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but you know, a lot of our high schools, like Allen ISD, for example, you know, their kids are graduating with associate's degrees, right? So they've already got that 2-year degree under their belt, and then perhaps they're going on to a 4-year institution or going into the workforce. Where do you see community colleges in the future? Do you see, you know, your enrollments sustaining, increasing, decreasing? Do you see your model changing because of that? And by the way, I am a personally huge fan of the early colleges program and P-Tech programs, because it really does. I mean, if you can get your associates and your high school degree for free and get, you know, an income potential higher than what you had, that's fantastic. But again, how are you shifting your model at Dallas College to be able to address some of this?
Well, you know, this entire campus was primarily designed to, number one, serve Allen ISD. You know, this is a comprehensive campus, and we're serving over 800 Allen ISD students weekly on our campus, either virtually or in person. You know, they take the general academic transfer courses on our campus. And we also, of course, have our CTE trade bars. We had 51 CTE dual credit students, and that's from Allen, McKinney, Frisco, and Prosper. We feel like we'll have a great deal more students in the fall. But, you know, that's our model. We've been growing at Collin College over the last several years immensely in dual credit. We serve many school districts. I think the number is up to 17 schools that we serve district-wide at Collin College. I think that's only going to continue to grow. And it makes perfect sense for students to graduate, at least attempt to graduate with an associate's degree, because the cost of education is always at the forefront. With Collin College, the tuition being so low at $54 a credit hour, the lowest in the state, we're very proud of that. Students can complete an associate's degree for the price of a questionable used car. For $5,000, a student can finish an associate's degree. And we have memorandums of understanding with Allen, McKinney ISD, Frisco, and Plano, that our students can come to the technical campus, take CTE courses and disciplines, and if those students are on free and reduced lunches, the tuition and fees are waived. And so there's a cost sharing agreement between the ISDs, so students can virtually come to school for free. And so, it's just such an opportunity. And we also have the opportunity of stackable credentials. And so a student can come and finish 16 hours in our HVAC program, and 80% of our students go to work day one, making between $15 and $18 an hour. So the opportunities are just endless, but I see that just only growing in the future.
Yeah, well, we want to encourage more students, right? Even if they go the traditional high school route, then to go on to a two-year college, get an associate's.
Because you're debt free.
After that, yeah, exactly. I cannot tell you how quickly the time went, and I think I'm a minute or two over our time, but I want to thank each of you. Honestly, I have learned so much, again, from the different angles and perspectives. I want to thank each of you for what you do on a daily basis. You're amazing. I appreciate it. And the Asian Chamber of Texas and Susan, Divya, great program. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I am absolutely privileged to be a part of it. So thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Susan, I'll swing it back to you.
Yes. Thank you, Mita, Rebecca, Robin, and Bill, for your candor and just saying it like it is. I mean, we, as parents in the Asian community, and I'm sure there's plenty of other individuals here from various backgrounds. It was very interesting to hear everything that you had to say, especially with all the programs that you're running and how you're running it. And you guys are doing a remarkable job, and I'm with you on the policy stuff. We are behind you. We will advocate for you regarding that. The Asian community is behind you, so just know that we will work for that. But on that note, this does conclude our event, and I want to thank all of our panelists here, and of course Dr. Mwbe for our keynote today. But I want to wish you all a very happy Lunar New Year, as that is being celebrated tomorrow. And also just to stay warm, stay connected, and stay safe. And, here's to a hopeful and prosperous 2021. I hope you guys stay in tune with us and continue to stay in partnership with us and stay tuned for our next events coming up. And we have a couple of them in February and throughout the rest of the year. So stay tuned. Thank you guys. Happy Thursday, and have a wonderful afternoon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.